Roy Moore has won the Alabama GOP primary runoff.
Together we can make America great.
This is really a repudiation of Mitch McConnell's lack of leadership in the U.S. Senate.
Everybody knows how much I love the NFL and how bigger than life it's always seemed to me. It's become a tool by the political forces of the left to advance their agenda.
So I joined so many now in the NFL and elsewhere in taking a knee.
And I kneel in honor of them.
The Taliban claiming responsibility for a rocket attack targeting Defense Secretary James Mattis while on a trip to Afghanistan.
President Trump is promising to make America competitive again. That is the opening pitch in his latest tax reform push.
We will cut taxes tremendously for the middle class, not just a little bit, but tremendously.
Nike released a statement yesterday in support of athletes. Then they introduced a new line of $400 kneeling shoes.
It makes you go faster.
Right. You know, I was a little stunned that the Apple's tired of making iPods.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's too easy.
Well, because
they're
going to
get rid of them, right? What I have is the iPod holder in my wristband. I will stick it in as a wristband. I put it in there.
Yeah.
And even the guy that I bought it from in Apple says, "You don't want this, do you?" And it's really been revolutionary. However, I went into Apple the other day and they go, "We're not making them anymore." Why would you phase out the iPod?
That's an Apple Watch, though, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. It was just I was just using my wrist as a prop.
I'm just trying to help you be hip.
That's right.
See, use the right terms.
The way it works is if Brian can mention Apple one more time in the 3-hour telecast, you're going to wind up with what? Free iTunes for a year?
At least a gift certificate somewhere. We'll see.
Anyway, thank you very much for joining us on this very busy Wednesday. Abby is in and Ainsley is off. Good to have you.
A busy Wednesday.
Indeed. In fact, right now we're going to start with a Fox News alert. The Taliban claiming responsibility for a rocket attack targeting Defense Secretary James Mattis shortly after landing in Afghanistan overnight.
30 rockets. Pentagon producer Lucas Tomlinson live at the Pentagon. He's been working this story and has brand new details. Lucas, this is a defense secretary that recognizes that sound.
Well, that's correct, Brian. If you remember, Defense Secretary Mattis was led the first Marines on the ground shortly after 9/11. But let's get with the breaking news. Moments ago, Fox News has learned the Taliban claimed responsibility for a massive rocket attack at Kabul's international airport. 40 to 45 rockets and rocket-propelled grenades landed near the passenger terminal just less than 2 hours after Defense Secretary Jim Mattis arrived with his entourage, which included the press. Now, I'm told that Mattis was in no danger. He'd already left the area aboard a helicopter, and the rocket attack was not near the location where he landed. But still, Brian, it's the same airport and certainly raises a lot of questions about security in Afghanistan 16 years after the 9/11 attacks. Now, Mattis a day ago was traveling in India, which might have put the Taliban on some kind of alert. It was not public that Defense Secretary Mattis would be arriving in Kabul today. He arrived aboard an Air Force C-17 cargo plane along with the NATO Secretary General for a press conference and meetings with Afghanistan's President Ghani. During a press conference a short time ago, Mattis spoke about the attack.
An attack on an international airport anywhere in the world is a criminal act by terrorists. It's designed to go after generally innocent people to make some sort of statement, and this is a classic definition of what the Taliban are up to right now. We will suffocate any hope that Al-Qaeda or ISIS, Daesh, Haqqani or the Taliban have of winning by killing. I want to reinforce to the Taliban that the only path to peace and political legitimacy for them is through a negotiated settlement.
Now, Secretary Mattis arrived in Kabul just after 11 p.m. Eastern Time, about 7:30 a.m. local. Now, this is the first trip by Defense Secretary Mattis after President Trump announced a new plan for South Asia, for Afghanistan and Pakistan, where 3,000 additional troops would be arriving shortly in Afghanistan to join the more than 11,000 U.S. troops currently there. Now, already, the U.S. Air Force has been stepping up airstrikes in Afghanistan. There were more airstrikes in August than any month since 2012. Back to you guys.
All right. Lucas Tomlinson live at the Pentagon with the breaking news. Lucas, thank you very much.
Meanwhile,
16 years later. Can you believe that we've been in Afghanistan for 16 years? And it's still this dangerous?
Right. It's a good point, Abby. I would say this. They say the rules of engagements have changed, and I saw a body make that statement over the weekend, last week at the UN, saying that it's night and day, the different philosophies under this Secretary of Defense and this administration, and they are putting more men, but not to do the surge, but to change who we're hunting for and how to protect.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're going to get more developments on that, but let's take you down to Alabama. And that man on the horse is the big winner. There he is, Judge Roy Moore. He was riding up on Tuesday to vote. That horse by the name is Sundance. And as you know, this was a classic case where the anti-establishment took on the establishment. And in this case, even though Roy Moore did not have the endorsement of the President of the United States, he won by 9 points. Interestingly enough, apparently Donald Trump's endorsement really didn't help because Roy Moore beat Luther Strange in the primary by 6, and with the president's endorsement, he actually beat him by 9.
But it's interesting, though, because a lot of people say Roy Moore's brand and what he stood for was far more in line with President Trump than Luther Strange. So here he is last night before giving his victory speech where he took some time to defend the Second Amendment. Let's play some of that.
Nearly 3 months of negative ads that we couldn't answer with money because we didn't have it. Ads that were completely false. That I don't believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the Second Amendment. Guns don't kill, people kill. Cars kill. Are we going to get rid of our cars? Are we going to get rid of our knives? No, we've got to bring morality back to our country.
Well, a lot of people said, hey, if Roy Moore wins, Democrats are going to pour money in because they think he might be vulnerable. It reminds me of when Governor Christie became a sports talk show host for a few days. He knows sports, but when they started asking him specific questions, he was kind of at a loss. Roy Moore knows his issues. Obviously, he's a legend in the area, and the polls show he's extremely knowledgeable. But he's got to start blitzing the books and the issues that maybe Senator Luther Strange had down pat, as in Mo Brooks, because the Democrats are saying that they're running Doug Jones. And although it's a long shot to take that seat, they perhaps are going to give it a real shot if they could find some vulnerabilities with him.
Well, the President of the United States sent this tweet out. Remember, he had been supporting Luther Strange. He sent out a tweet yesterday supporting Luther Strange. And last night he sent out congratulations to Roy Moore on his Republican primary win in Alabama. Luther Strange started way back and ran a good race. Roy win in December. And, of course, that's when he does take on the Democrat. Meanwhile, let's talk about something else.
He's going to join us, by the way. Roy Moore will be on the show a little bit later on.
Yeah, his first interview in the morning.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. All right. You think he'll be up for us?
I think he will be. And in December, he'll have his runoff, and many people assume we'll get that.
Can I just say quickly, though, the brand that he was running on, sort of this outside Washington, away from the swamp. It's so interesting that the election happened the day that health care went down yet again. The frustration that so many of the American people feel about the lack of work that's being done in Washington. And once again, I think this is more about a movement than it is about any particular individual or any candidate or even about President Trump.
And do you think this is banned against Trump? You can write us. I will bring this up, too. Is that yesterday it goes down and the sort of health care go down, and Roy Moore made it clear he wouldn't have voted for it. And many people speculate he'll be a Rand Paul type senator, kind of sticking to his principle rather than at times compromising.
I was reading in one of the Alabama newspapers this morning and said if Donald Trump was the middle finger to the Republican establishment last year, Roy Moore is the middle finger on the other hand. Meanwhile, let's talk about how the #1 topic in the country has been whether or not the NFL players should stand during the national anthem. Now, good news for the President of the United States. A majority of Americans, according to a couple of polls, say they're with the President on that. But a number of Democrats actually, and there you see some of the players who took the knee on Sunday, a number of Democrats actually took a knee in the U.S. Congress, two by name, Sheila Jackson Lee and Mark Pocan. Listen to this.
You tell me which of those children's mothers or a son of a bee. That is racism. You cannot deny it. You cannot run for it. And I kneel in honor of them.
I join so many now in the NFL and elsewhere in taking a knee for the America that we all aspire it to be.
We should also point out a Republican by the name of Alex Mooney from West Virginia defended President Trump for saying the NFL's players should stand after those two took a knee.
Nielsen gave them some bad news. The games are down slightly, about 3% year to year. However, Monday Night Football this Monday night was up 3%. Maybe it's because a lot has to do perhaps with the Cowboys. I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen this week because I was watching Benjamin Watson last night for the Ravens, and he said, we all want to stand. We kind of, I'm getting the sense they want this to end. They just don't know how. That's why I want the commissioner and the union president to get together and give everyone a face-saving way out. There's no winners here.
Yeah, they want to get back to what this is all about to begin with, is football. Right? Get the politics out of it. I think maybe some of the viewership, maybe because it was up 3%, people want to know what's going to go on. Well, are people going to kneel? Are people going to stand? People are fascinated by it. But Rush Limbaugh talked about this, and he said that the NFL has become now propaganda for the left. Here's what he said.
We're dealing with liberalism here, and we're dealing with the left, and that's just not how they operate. Everybody knows how much I love the NFL and how bigger than life it's always seemed to me, but it doesn't seem bigger than life. It just seems... It seems like a tool now. It has become something being used by the political forces of the left to advance their agenda, which is an anti-American agenda.
And we mentioned the polls. The Reuters poll that we put up a moment ago shows that a majority of Americans stand with the president on this.
Look at that, 85% strongly or somewhat agree.
Right. There's a new Remington Research Group poll out. They say that 51% of Americans are watching less television football. Why? Because 70% of the players, 70% of the respondents say because they don't like the fact that players are using the NFL as a stage for their political views. And 80% of Americans want to see less politics in sports.
Right.
Politics are okay on a news show, not so good in sports.
Rush Limbaugh is going to be on with Sean on Thursday night. Tonight he's going to have Paul Ryan. Last night, Bill O'Reilly was great. And Jillian, you know all about the NFL locker room. Some of the best guys you'll ever meet in sports play football.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so I know they want out of this political mess.
You wonder how you get out, though. That's the big question right now. We'll certainly keep you posted. For now, let's get you caught up on the headlines of the morning. Starting right here, convicted killer scheduled to die is spared by the Supreme Court for now. Overnight, justices granting a stay of execution for 59-year-old Keith Leroy Tharp. The decision coming hours after Tharp was supposed to be put to death. But attorneys appealed, claiming the Georgia man is intellectually disabled and that one of his jurors was racist. Tharp is guilty of murdering his sister-in-law nearly 3 decades ago. A week after Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico, President Trump is planning a visit to the U.S. island.
It's the earliest I can go because of the first responders, and we don't want to disrupt the relief efforts.
The White House also amending a disaster declaration promising more federal funding as power, clean water, and gas remain in short supply. The Navy is now preparing to send its hospital ship to Puerto Rico to help with relief efforts. The U.S. Navy also on the ground of the island of Dominica, demolished by the Category 5 storm. New video showing American service members loading families on board a helicopter, many of them young children. One of the kids giving a sailor a high five after getting strapped in before heading to a shelter. Maria killing at least 27 people on that island. Guys.
All right. Thank you, Jillian.
All right. President Trump set to unveil a big tax reform plan today. What is it? We'll give you a hint, but not yet.
Together we can make America great. We can support the president. Don't let anybody in the press think that because he supported my opponent that I do not support him and support his agenda.
And then he got a call from the president, did Roy Moore, who won last night. Conservative outsider Judge Moore declaring victory yesterday in a heated Senate primary race, but he won easily. Well, we saw the president go with the Washington establishment candidate, Luther Strange, and they seem to have a personal relationship. Here to react now is Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel. And Ronna, did the wrong person win in the RNC's perspective last night?
No, the voters chose, and that's always the right way. The voters chose their nominee. We're going to get in and make sure that Roy Moore is the next senator from Alabama, and the voters did the right thing.
Democrats are seeing vulnerability there because he's someone new to the national stage.
No, we're gonna be in place. There's more Republicans than Democrats in Alabama. Let's do the math. So the RNC will go in, we'll put our ground game in place, we'll turn out our voters, and Roy Moore is going to be the next senator.
President tweeted last night, congratulations to Roy Moore on his Republican, as we go ahead, I didn't memorize it, Republican win in Alabama. Luther Strange started way back and ran a good race. Roy won in December, and he was very classy in defeat last night, which is, it's a great quality to have that Hillary Clinton has not displayed. But in having said that, he quickly went to, the president reached back, and Roy Moore reached over. How important is that?
It's critical, and we knew that was going to happen. You have these primaries, you put your best foot forward, and then you come together because our purpose unites us, and as Republicans, we know what we need to get done for this country, and we need to support the president's agenda.
Majority Leader Mitch McConnell wanted Luther Strange, and a lot of people say this was Mitch McConnell against Steve Bannon. And Mitch McConnell's candidate, he shepherded in $30 million from you guys, and he still lost. What does that say about the leader? What should he take from this?
Well, just coming from Michigan, voters want to choose their own candidate. They don't like Washington coming in and saying this is going to be your next senator. And so let the process play out. Let the primaries play out. Let the voters choose who the nominee is going to be. And then bring the establishment in, the party structure in to help get that candidate across the finish line.
Do you, when you go talk to the people, you're getting frustration back when you talk to Republican donors as well as voters. What are they saying to you?
Yeah, I was in Pennsylvania this week, and they're frustrated. They're saying, we sent you there. We gave you the White House, the Senate, and the House. We want the repeal and replace of Obamacare because it's hurting us. Our lives are hurting. So I hear that. The president hears it. He's never giving up on this. We need to expand our margins in 2018. I say, hold on. We need to give you a better Senate. We have an opportunity to expand our Senate majority.
For different reasons, Collins, Murkowski, McCain, and Rand Paul are just holding their ground and not playing ball with the rest. Who's right? Them to holding their principles or the others?
Well, there's two things at stake. One, the fact that we made this promise for 7 years and we're not delivering. And two, can we govern when we have the majority? We need to show people that we deserve the majority.
All right, Ronna McDaniel, thanks so much. Crazy time, but intense time. Coming up straight ahead, birth control. In fact, we'll do this NFL story. The Buffalo Bills, just one of the teams taking a knee, but one Bills stadium worker just quit. We'll talk to him.
Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall.
Some quick headlines for you now. A major milestone for one of President Trump's biggest campaign promises, crews breaking ground on prototypes for the Mexican border wall. Over the next month, 6 companies will build a total of 8 models. President Trump says he will pick that winning design. Also, this immigrants will soon have their social media monitored by the feds. The Department of Homeland Security adding a new rule that allows the government to collect information from immigrants' Facebook, Twitter, and Instagrams. That includes permanent residents and naturalized citizens. It goes into effect on October 18th after a comment period. Steve, over to you.
Thanks, Abby. The Buffalo Bills were just one of the many NFL teams who knelt during the national anthem on Sunday. That angered one stadium security guard so much, he quit. Eric Nickershire posted a picture of himself walking out one last time on Facebook saying, after almost 30 years of working for the Buffalo Bills through the good seasons and a lot of bad ones, I was finally pushed to the limit today and I had to quit. I cannot work in a place where multimillionaires cry that they are oppressed. And Eric Nickershire joins us live right now from Buffalo. Eric, good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
Let's take you back to Sunday. I know it was an awful day for you personally. You were working security. You do work in law enforcement. You saw the protest. And then after the anthem, what did you do?
After the anthem ended, I took off my Buffalo Bills hat, threw it on the ground, took off my security shirt, and walked out of the tunnel. I went and quit my job.
Why did this protest affect you so deeply?
Because it was during the national anthem, and that's something I hold dear to my heart. A lot of people have fought and died for this country, and that's the song and the flag signify that to me. And I have a lot of friends that are veterans. I have family members that are disabled veterans. And my father was a Korea War vet, or is a Korea War vet. And the national anthem and the flag mean a lot to me. So in my heart, I had to take my stand, and it was a personal stand, and I had to quit.
You just mentioned your father. After you took the stand and you quit because you were so infuriated by this NFL protest, and there's a picture of you with your dad at a birthday.
Yeah.
What did your dad do?
His birthday.
What did your dad do?
He called me that night, and he was broken up. He was proud of me, but he was in tears with pride.
Why?
And because I stood up for veterans, and you know, I did the right thing in my heart and his heart. I took a stand, and even though I stood alone, I still took the stand.
Eric, how long have you worked for the Bills as a security guy, and what are the people saying? What are the fans saying in Buffalo?
I started the Bills the first year they went to the Super Bowl, and I've worked most of the years in between. And I haven't talked to any of the fans. I've talked to some coworkers who give me a lot of support. And, you know, I've, of course, gotten a lot of support on Facebook from veterans, other law enforcement officers, Gold Star mothers. And, of course, I've gotten some hate mail on Facebook, but I take that for what it's worth.
Eric, what should the players be doing instead of kneeling?
I believe kneeling is, to me, is the players saying there's a problem, someone else fix it. I believe if they went out into the community, took some time, and did something, were a solution as opposed to just kneeling and saying someone else fix this, be a solution. Do something about it.
Well, you've got your Sunday afternoons available now. What are you going to do?
Yes, sir. Spend a lot of time with my wife, my children, my grandson, my parents.
Well, good for you. Thank you very much for coming in today, Eric, and telling us your side of the story.
Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it.
All right. Eric Nickershire, former security guard for the Bills, who quit Sunday because he didn't like the protest. Thank you, sir. What do you think about that? Email us, friends@foxnews.com. You can tweet us or Facebook as well. Meanwhile, President Trump set to unveil his big tax reform plan today. So what's in it? We can't tell you until later this morning, but here's a hint. There's a good bit of news for the middle class. We are live in Washington with details coming up. Plus, this ain't the little red wagon you had as a kid. This one, that one right there, it's big, and it goes 0 to 90 in 7 seconds. And happy birthday to our friend Meatloaf. Meatloaf is 70 years old today. That's a lot of candles on that loaf.
I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. No, I won't do that.
After President Trump called for pro athletes to be fired if they didn't stand for the national anthem, Nike released a statement yesterday in support of athletes and their right to freedom of expression. Then they introduced a new line of $400 kneeling shoes.
That's really good.
That is fantastic. 27 minutes now before the top of the hour. I want to go over some of these polls again because they're just coming in about where the public stands when it comes to standing and sitting for the national anthem.
Yeah.
And let's take a look at this.
First of all, Reuters asked this. You almost always stand in silence when the national anthem is played in person. 85% strongly or somewhat agree. And then when it comes to professional athletes, the question goes like this.
If it should be a rule or not. Professional athletes should be required to stand during the national anthem. That number is still above majority, 58%, but obviously lower than 85%. So we were talking about this in the commercial break, Steve, and we actually are different on this because, look, I think it's about as disrespectful as it can get when you decide to kneel during the national anthem. Whenever you decide to disrespect the flag, our national anthem, what this country stands for, you don't want to be in that place. But to put a rule in to say that players are forced to stand, that's just not what this country was founded on. I mean, I've spent time living in China.
Sure.
I've seen how the people live over there. And so when you start putting rules in place, where does that end?
But here's the thing, Abby. If I have my private business And let's say, for this sake, I'll say, let's say I own the NFL. You know, I am the commissioner of the NFL, hired by the owners of the teams in the league. I have a bunch of rules. Okay, they're going to wear white shoes. They're going to wear socks so high. They're going to appear on time. When they come for example, the NBA says, when you're hurt, I want you on the sidelines with a suit and tie. Just my rule, okay? And then I would say one other thing when it comes to the national anthem. As a private company, you should say, if that's what you believe, stand with your hand over your heart, or at least have attention on the sideline. If not, you're going to be fine. Now, if Abby Huntsman says, that's not what I think America's about, then I would say, Abby, you can go to the CFL, or you could go to the union and with the players and say, I want that changed.
It's one of the rules
it's private.
Regarding the place of employment, which is privately held. There are also all these stories floating around that apparently I read in a Mark Thiessen op-ed in the Washington Post yesterday that it is a requirement. It's part of the contract, the NFL contract, that during the national anthem, players have got to stand and have to be facing the Old Glory.
Here's how you parse it. It's not a rule. It's one of these regulations that people put into place. But the NFL a year ago didn't enforce it when Colin Kaepernick. They let it go, so it's gone wild.
This is completely on the NFL because they didn't enforce it.
I just worry about what that would do to this country, because that is what we were founded on. The ability to protest, the ability to stand up for something that you believe in. When you feel like change needs to be made, this is not the right way to do it. I think we all agree with that on this couch. There are a million ways you can protest and not kneel during the national anthem. But that is what this country was. When I look at that flag, I think of freedom. When I think about what my brothers are fighting for in the Navy, I'm thinking about that.
Abby, there's nothing you said that's inaccurate. However, if there was a rule, you're founded on freedom, but we only get an hour for lunch, and you want to be free to take 2 hours, that job has every reason to say, Abby, I'm going to have to make a change, because you're taking this 2-hour lunch and we can only allow 1 hour. And the NFL is going to say, okay, you're the best player in the league. I'm going to have to suck it up at some point. But when you become a liability more than an asset, I'm going to make a choice. That's what Kaepernick did. If he was the best quarterback in the league, he'd have 20 offers.
Yeah, well, he's not, and he's not even playing anymore.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
And so the free market would respond to your 2-hour lunch request.
What do you guys think? Because we've been debating this morning. Email us at friends@foxnews.com. Do you think it should be a rule for the players to not sit during the national anthem? Send us your thoughts. We want to know. I have a feeling more people are going to be on Brian's side.
Right.
But, you know, when you look at the polls, I'm actually with the majority, 85%, who think that they should stand always during the national anthem. But when you talk about rules, that opens up a different conversation.
Unfortunately, we sometimes have to have rules.
Yeah.
So anyway, let us know. Friends@foxnews.com, Facebook, and Twitter us as well.
All right. Well, today President Trump is heading to Indiana to pitch the Republicans' new tax plan to the American people.
The plan, in the works for months, is expected to slash rates for businesses and individuals, particularly the middle class.
Here to reveal his taxes for the first time on live television, Griff Jenkins. Griff, show me your taxes.
Good morning. Well, it's not me, but the House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Kevin Brady will unveil those details later today to House members as President Trump heads to Indiana to start selling it.
We will cut taxes tremendously for the middle class, not just a little bit, but tremendously.
And cut it at will. Brian, here's some of what we expect. It will cut the corporate tax rate to 20% from 35%. It will cut the tax rate on pass-through businesses to 25%. It'll collapse individual tax rate brackets down to 3, 35, 25, 12, we expect, dropping from that top rate of 39.6 that everyone fears who makes any money, doubling the standard deduction, which is a set amount, of course, of income that anyone is exempt from. And then we also expect some other proposals which eliminate the estate tax and the alternative minimum tax. They expect to expand child care tax credits. They expect to allow businesses to accelerate the expensing of investments and possibly creating a one-time repatriation of a company's foreign earnings. Now, this plan was conceived with what is being called the Big Six. That includes the White House, the Treasury Secretary, of course, Chairman Brady, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Orrin Hatch, and Speaker Paul Ryan. But the first challenge comes in the House, and whether or not that House Freedom Caucus, those conservatives like it, they're meeting after the plan is unveiled and possibly voting to see whether or not they support it, guys. Big day on taxes.
Hey, Griff, and there's a report in Politico that the president, I'm going to ask Kellyanne Conway shortly, wasn't entirely thrilled with the product that he got put in front of him. So I don't know if it's a lower tax rate that's slightly jacked up, or the upper rate that's slightly jacked down that Steve Bannon came out
You
of.
can't give her hints of what we're going to ask her.
Right.
Now she's going to be all prepared.
I don't think she listens.
Well, pay attention. What matters most is whether the House Freedom Caucus likes it, because they're a big bloc, and they're going to vote whether they like it.
That's
so
a great
pay
point.
attention to that.
All right. Thank you so much, Griff.
He always has to have the last word.
Well, he does because we asked him. All right. Meanwhile, 20 minutes before the top of the hour, and Jillian has the headline word right now.
That's right. Good Wednesday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. The teen accused of shooting a police officer in the face stood in front of a judge just last week. 18-year-old Frank Valencia given probation after being caught with a stash of guns and 300 rounds of ammunition. Days after that ruling, police say he pulled the trigger on Officer Kayla Mayer outside New York City. Officer Mayer was released from the hospital yesterday, greeted and cheered by her fellow officers. Officer Mayer was shot in the chin. She is expected to be okay. Birth control is now just as easy to get as a candy bar. Stanford University is selling emergency contraceptives in vending machines on campus, right outside an all-gender restroom. According to the Stanford Daily newspaper, the university even offers students a discount by subsidizing the cost. Some students complained they could only get the morning after pill on campus during limited hours at the health center. This is a childhood dream come true, and it goes from 0 to 90 in just 7 seconds. A Florida man spending $30,000 making a giant street-legal radio flyer wagon. A mechanic built the frame, but he did everything else. The man says he drives it everywhere except for church. His wife doesn't want to get her hair messy. That's awesome.
That is fantastic. Awesome. And the crazy thing about the wagon is they put a little kid in the wagon and they bounce him off the metal sides. And I'm wondering, does he seem secure in that?
I think they're
Is he
okay.
bouncing while you're trying to seat in that?
He's strapped.
He's fine.
Yeah, attention parents. These kids need seats. Don't just throw them in the wagon.
And seatbelts.
Keep that in mind. Yeah, seatbelts in the wagon.
But it was, thank you very much, Shirley. It was his childhood dream. Remember when you were little and you thought, you know, when I grow up, I'm going to have chocolate candy every meal.
And you get it when you grow up.
And then you grow up and it's kind of like, I can have that twice a week, according to my cardiologist.
Right, and I wanted to be an astronaut, and I'm right on track. So it's going great.
Yeah. All right, still ahead. Kellyanne Conway is joining us, General Jeff Sessions, and people pay good money for his financial advice for you. It is free. Chris Hogan is the author of the book Retire Inspired. He's answering your emails. We're going to bring that to you right after this break.
Plus, he's the producer behind the box office hits like Miracles from Heaven and Devin Franklin. He says it's possible to have a successful career without losing your faith in Hollywood. He will join us live next.